take a trip across the galaxy and feel the waves of our own energy. Everything will come together slowly.
Hello and welcome to the Skip Squad podcast, where we don't care about what you write, we care about what you love. I'm tstaffor.
And I am Luxaiko. Today we've picked out fun things, right?
Yeah, so this is episode 1, so we haven't got any guests or anything like that. I just wanted us to go over some of our favorite SCPs.
Me except I'm permanent. I am the best. Thank you. Smiles.
Yes, you're not a guest. You're too good to be a guest.
So ladies first.
So I'm going to just go from my number 1 down, just because I want to make sure we get to my number 1.
Of course.
I have like 10, so if we actually went from backwards, I don't know if we'd get to it. So I have, as my very top favorite ever SCP, is SCP-5031, Yet Another Murder Monster by PeppersGhost.
Oh, I haven't actually read that one yet.
Yeah, it's definitely the most popular SCP I still sing the praises of. It's got almost 2,000 upvotes. Currently looking at the page, it's got 1,836. But I still love it so much. And I mean, it's popular for a reason. Not to spoil much, but it just starts out with like a very short little note that's kind of in the style of like older Series 1 SCPs, where it's just like, this is a thing that screams all the time and we keep it in a box because whenever it escapes, it eats a bunch of people, and if you look at it, then it disappears from existence until you look away again.
Gee, did you just spoil the entire thing for me? What the heck, man?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That first note at the very beginning, that's the whole SCP.
That's it? It ends there?
A new doctor gets transferred to being the, like, main researcher of it, and he decides to actually do some tests on it, and it escalates from there, and I won't spoil the ending, but it's definitely more than just another murder monster.
Oh my god, I could have never seen this coming. Guys, what the heck?
If I'm not mistaken, it was written for ClichéCon, which to date has probably created some of my favorite SCPs. I mean, my number 1 favorite. And I think one of the other ones on this list is from that ClichéCon. But it was basically a contest where you had to write something following like an old, outdated cliche, either like a murder monster, which this one was, or like include a log where like an entire like MTF died in an exploratory mission, or stuff like that. Or like an interview log where the interviewed is acting all mysterious and stuff like that. And a ton of stuff came out of that.
It really did inspire good stuff.
Another one that I don't think I have on my top 10 is D11424 and the Land of Too Many Doors. I can't remember its SCP number because I never remember the numbers. I just remember titles, but that was a very fun one.
Yeah, when we were going through making our choices here, I was like searching up the 10 iterations of the title that I knew, because I never even get it right. I'll be like, it's something like this.
I hope I got D11424 right. I'm not even sure about that.
Haha. I actually got mine right. Actually, I don't know the titles of half of mine.
That's one of my main annoyances with the main hub of SCP stuff, is the top rated pages list doesn't have the titles, and I feel like titles add a lot to an article. They kind of are the main thing you go into an article with.
Yeah, I also wish it was visible from the article, right? Because you can look on the list of numbers and then you just won't find, like you'll have the name, but when you open up the actual article, all you get is the number, so you don't really know what you might be getting into.
Yeah, I think that's still like a carrying over from like kind of the initial gimmicks of the wiki, where like hopefully people would stumble across it and think it's an actual real government site.
Sadly.
What is your top article?
So, I lied. My first one is actually also a PeppersGhost thing. Apparently, we may as well call this the PeppersGhost episode. I already know who we need to get on.
It's a PeppersGhost fan cast.
All we know here is PeppersGhost. I think you'll know it immediately. It's SCP-2030, also known as Laugh is Fun.
Laugh is Fun.
Which is such an iconic one. The 2000s were so important to the site, but 2030 is essentially I'm sure you know, but if you don't, a show called Laugh is Fun that has this host, and it gets like shock horror. They do a lot of funny things, but there'll still be like a laugh track, or funny things. They do horrific things, and then everyone's like, they're clowning around. It has the best image on the site ever, which, by the way, if you don't know, it's a man climbing out of a shower. It's a picture of
That's
Pepper's
the best
Ghost.
image of the site?
Wait,
that's
that is
Pepper's
the
Ghost?
author. That is
He
the
actually
author.
took it himself. Wow.
Yeah. They dressed up in a nice suit. I'm pretty sure. I'm like 90% sure that is a fact. And it is so funny to me. Like, imagine being like, oh god, I'm writing this really cool SCP about gore. Time for me to dress up in a fancy blue suit, hop in the shower, and climb out. Really. You have to applaud PeppersGhost for their creativity. It's scary how good it is.
I really love images on articles that are like created by someone to mimic different websites. Another of my favorite SCPs is Jack, I think is just what it's called, or maybe like Psychopath Social Media or something, but it's about a website called Jack that only people who have murdered at least one person in their life can access, and anyone else who looks at it gets a memetic kill agent. And there's a bunch of pictures of the website on it, and I love that because Laugh is Fun has one of like what Laugh is Fun would look like on like Netflix. I always like when people make those. I also have an admission about 2030. I read it and absolutely loved it, and for like a year I went around saying like, oh yeah, I really loved Laugh is Fun, and I did not know that there was a collapsible that had an addendum of episode descriptions. I thought the whole thing was just...
Funnily enough, I wasn't gonna say it. I didn't know it either. I didn't, because I was, oh my god, I listen much more than I read, and when I read it, I didn't understand that addendums were like a thing, and because there's like a thing right under it, and it's like the following is a transcription, right?
Yeah, I thought that collapsible was just saying that's the addendum.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, so this is, I open it one day, and I'm like, holy shit, there's so many more.
One time someone randomly mentioned Laugh is Fun, and someone mentioned Margaret Thatcher, and I was like, why did they just talk about Margaret Thatcher? Which one of the episode themes in the example episodes is themed Margaret Thatcher, but I was so confused when someone brought her up after talking about Laugh is Fun.
You know, if you look in the article and you pay attention to the seasons, there's canonically at least 37 seasons as of 2013. That is insane. I love it.
Actually, 38 seasons.
Wait, where's the 38 one?
In the picture of the Netflix, it says 1976 to 2014 with 38 seasons.
Who knows how many more since then?
I'd say about 8, if I guessed.
They quit. They stopped after 2014. There's no more.
Well, my second favorite SCP is one I really want to do like a full reading of. It's very long though, but it's so good. It's called SCP-5178, Eat the Sun with Seth Uhar, which is about an old man, an old homeless guy, who emerging from his chest is a radio that is constantly broadcasting a channel that you can't turn it away from. If you try and turn it away, this like perfectly catatonic homeless guy will move his hand and turn the dial back to this station.
What?
And the station is broadcasting the radio show Eat the Sun with Seth Uhar that is mainly just like music that is played either really, really fast or really, really slow at different speeds that all include sun in the title of the song. Like Walkin' on Sunshine, or I can't think of any others right now, but there's a bunch. But it's periodically interrupted by the radio host Seth Uhar coming on to tell people and preach about the fact you have to go eat the sun. And he doesn't mean literally eat the sun. He just means destroy your sun because it's killing all of you slowly. There's a couple different types of things that he has. He has the anti-solarist ideology. He has a radio play that he does both the voices for called Sunless Days, about two humans living in a society without the sun. And he is probably an alien from another universe, so he does not really know how to act like regular humans. So he's just like, oh, hello, wife, are you going to jobs? And she's like, yes, I'm so glad it's rain today. And then soulless conversations, SOL-less conversations, where he interviews different alien creatures whose societies have eaten their own sons, and the creatures are never, like, understandable. They're just like gurgles, but he responds to them. like hears them, but it's very long, and you really actually get a feel. Like, obviously his ideology is crazy: kill your son, destroy it. But like by the end of it, you really feel for the guy. He's so desperate to eat the sun.
You really feel for the guy and what he might be proposing. Maybe you should eat the sun. So welcome to the Eat the Sun podcast. It was all a ploy. It was all lies. That actually sounds good. It's long?
It's very long. Because it's got like a bunch of examples of the radio host. It's got like 7 different examples of some of his segments. And they're like long segments.
That's like the best kind though. When they really get in depth, and that's what really builds character and like story, I find. Like, oh yes, give me more. Tell me more about what this sun-eating guy is up to today.
I also really like the style SCPs where like the SCP itself is not the focus. Like here the SCP itself is this man who's staying alive even though he's got a radio embedded in his chest and doesn't eat or sleep. But like that doesn't matter. It's about Seth Uhar coming from his chest.
Funnily enough, I completely forgot to even mention the body, and those are the best ones where you like start and there's like an object, and by the end you're like, man, what did this start off as? And you're like, oh my god, yeah, like a chair that like glows in the dark or something like that, and you're like, huh, crazy how it destroyed the world and had several romance arcs.
And I think you get the best of both worlds there too, because like if you read like a Series 1 SCP, they're still fun because they're like mysterious objects, but there's not really any more meat after that. But like these ones still have that like Series 1 charm of like just this object that does this weird thing, but then also adds on with an actual like story behind it.
Absolutely. I suppose I should go on with my second one. So once again, it's a PeppersGhost article.
PeppersGhost fancast back at ya.
Yeah, they're all PeppersGhost. No, and this one also pretty well known. tstaffor, I don't think you would know it though. This is just a little bit out of your range. It's just a small article. It's called SCP-4000. It's not got much to it really. I don't think many people read it. But essentially, if you can even begin to imagine, it's about these fae, and it comes from sort of Celtic views of what fairies are, which we call the fae, and the idea that names hold great importance. But the Foundation finds a way to meet these people, and it's so cool, and like you can't refer to them. Like if you called them fae twice, I guess you'd just combust and die. I don't know. You can try if you'd like to. I did, and I can tell you right now I'm on fire. Very inconvenient.
You like 4000? You must be a fellow scholar then.
Oh my god, right? If you don't... Honestly, 4000 is my favorite K. Like, all the others are great and all, but this one, like, really read into me. I'm such a fan. If you like fairy tales, but you feel like you haven't ever gotten one that read to you properly, then 4000 is it. It feels like a fairy tale for adults, which is so nice. Oh my god. I want to go more into it, but it's one of those things you have to read for yourself because I wouldn't want to tell you. The concept I've given is so good. The better part though is the like branches it led, because it introduced these folks called, I believe they're called Nameless. That's the tag we use for them. And it's inspired some amazing work. So not only amazing art, but absolutely astounding stories. Like Jack Dragon writes quite a bit about it, of these folk and what they get up to. And it's great. I love that. Slice of life for the fae.
I think another thing 4000 does really well that I always enjoy seeing in these articles is utilizing special containment procedures. I've gotten a bit of a habit of skipping them when I first started reading, and I've really stopped doing that because so many, especially of like these later ones, really utilize special containment procedures as the hook to an article, and I think this one does it really well with all the different mentions of the green text, where it like is a different thing each time, but they're all green text, and just from like the special containment procedures, you get so much info.
Such an interesting hook, by the way. Like, it gives so much information, but I wouldn't necessarily describe the special containment procedures as a major hook. Like, they're good, but it's not like, if it was just plain or something, I feel like it wouldn't have worked. But, like, with the green text, it's so interesting, because it's not often that we get visually grabbing things. Like, the last time it was done, it was probably, like, 2521, right? Where it uses images instead. It's very unique to once again see something like this being played out. That level of creativity is beyond me. Like, these are the things where, like, when you try to sit down and think of a new color and you can't come up with anything.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine how these people come up with ideas. And by these people, I mean PeppersGhost.
I wouldn't consider this a format screw, but just format screws are another, like, amazing thing I think are really well pulled off. I mean, I've personally worked with, like, 2 other people to make the format screw hub that has links to, like, all the different format screw articles, because that concept, that way of writing is so interesting to pull off to me.
Talk about dedication to what you love. I respect it. I respect it.
Also, a quick shout out to the bottom of this page. There's a very, like, looked over aspect, because, I mean, it's pretty useless, which is the wiki surfing at the bottom, where, like, you link the number lower and the number higher of your SCP, and then the name of your SCP is in the middle. And so for SCP-4000, the middle part is just Taboo. That also happens on the main list. Instead of saying SCP-4000 and then a title, it just says redacted per protocol issue.
Yes, it's so nice. Oh, this article has like a few Easter eggs in it, which is great. Like, I know that there's some point in this article where you can find an entire other page that has like a bit of a poem. Very cool.
Yes, so many articles have those. Like, SCP-5000 has such, like, a mystery box style design where you can find, like, more stuff in the article.
Never greet someone with yo. That's what this article teaches you. That's what I would consider the moral of the story. If you meet someone, say yo. If you're an eldest child, fuck out of here. That's not going to make any sense, but yeah.
So my third favorite is SCP-4634 Out of Order, which was the first ever article I read with my all-time favorite containment class, which the basic ones are Safe, Euclid, Keter, but this one introduces Archon, which is basically, it could be contained, but the world is better off if you don't contain it, which, this one is funny because it's just out of order signs that if you put on a door to a room, it makes, like, everything in the room broken. So, like, if you put it on the door to, like, a kitchen, all of, like, the blender and oven and stuff just won't be able to turn on, and all the forks will, like, fuse together, so they're just like spoons. The drawers just kind of won't open anymore, they're fused shut, they're just solid wood, and stuff like that. Or, like, in a bedroom, the blanket and mattress will turn to, like, a stone-like material, and, like, all the clothes in the dresser will become, like, tattered and stuff. But the way they found all of these out-of-order signs were that they were on the inside of a stone door on these, like, stone obelisks all over the world. There was 365 of them, facing towards just the outside of the area around the obelisk. And when they took down the 365th, the world just, I guess, started working, and that caused, like, an end-of-the-world scenario where the world just started, like, actually functioning, because apparently the world that humans can exist in is a broken world, and so it, like, started functioning so well that, like, time kind of looped in on itself, and we came back, and this time we had that knowledge, so they were like, okay, just don't take down any of the signs, just leave them in those obelisks, let's leave our world broken, because that's the only way humanity can survive.
But yeah, let's just keep it broke. I love that. What the heck?
Yeah, and that's Archon for you. Is just don't touch this or the world is gonna end.
Kind of similar are those tropes that are like, yeah, this is what would be considered better, but we don't like it, so let's just, like, not. Or whatever misconstrued version of this is better it might entail. There's so many good ones out there that'll introduce, like, oh yeah, this is heaven, and then the Foundation is like, no, we don't want that. We'll pick a better one, thank you.
Yeah, let's just ignore heaven for now. Heaven seems too magical.
Yeah, I feel like it. God, that, like, articles like that kind of make me question at what point is the Foundation really documenting things that are anomalous, right? Because if you think about it, anything new that was not discovered before, they basically label an anomaly. And some of them make sense.
Isn't there a 001 about that, though? I thought there was a 001 called, like, Normalcy or whatever, that's, like, a list of things they consider normal, and it has been updated multiple times with stuff they first considered anomalous, but have now put into Normalcy.
There is. And that is the stuff I really like, But I also love the opposite, where people will be like, oh, this, and there's been a few things that are like, like that, which in a way you could consider maybe that was meant to be there. It's like stuff like the heaven or hell, or like better versions of the world, or how the world ends and stuff like that. And they're like, this is an anomaly. And it's like, in theory, it's not.
Oh, actually, I'd like to do just one more of mine in a row.
Of course.
Skipping ahead to my, what is this? My sixth favorite, which is... I also think I forgot to mention who wrote Out of Order, which Out of Order was by MaliceAforethought, and Eat the Sun with Seth Uhar was by DecoyMesa. So I just wanted to shout them out. But this one is SCP-184 Karma Kameleon by T. Rutherford, which T. Rutherford is someone I had read a bunch of their stuff before I really started looking at authors, which I feel bad for. The first 2 years I was reading this site, I did not care about who wrote stuff. And going back and re-looking at some that I read back there, it's funny how a bunch of the stuff that I love is by specific authors, and T. Rutherford has 5 articles that I absolutely adore. But 4228 Karma Kameleon is about a set of lost VHS tapes of this old kids show called Karma Kameleon that's kind of a paper cutouts style animated show about Karma Kameleon and their adventures in the colorful forest, the rainbow forest. And each episode removes something about your dreams. But the things that they remove are things that us personally in the real world don't have in our dreams. For instance...
Existence.
Take
your time.
I can't remember. Oh, here, these ones. Subjects can no longer create heat or cold or any kinetic sensation during dreams. Subjects can no longer freely manipulate the landscape of their dreams, which some people can with lucid dreaming, but a majority of people, personally, I can't easily manipulate my surroundings in a dream. So they're all things we can't do. And at the end of it, there's an addendum where you put in your security credentials as being 054, and then there's a big series of notes from 054 about how these did actually get out. And so dreaming as we know it today is anomalous because we've already been affected by this widespread show. So the dreams that we have now are way worse and less than the dreams that we had before this happened. But since it got so widespread, they just decided to make that what normal dreaming is like. And so lucid dreamers in the real world are just people who weren't affected by this SCP and haven't had it spread to them.
That is so cool. See, that's the type of stuff that I was talking about. It's so good. I especially love when things can leak into the real world, so that way it feels a little
Yeah, that's a gimmick for a couple SCPs. It's called some type of protocol. I can't remember what the protocol is called, but there's a couple. Another one is why photos earlier in the past are black and white is because the world actually was black and white, and then there was an infection that caused color, and so now that's normalcy, even though technically us perceiving in color is anomalous.
Thank God.
And we were supposed to only ever see in black and white.
Thank God that anomaly came and fucking saved us.
Which is SCP-8900.-EX.
Oh my God. These are some good picks. My God. What the heck?
Do you want to do your other one?
I got you. The next one I have in line is... This one you might actually genuinely not know. I like to think this is probably my niche-ist one. 5923 by Grigori Karpin is an SCP article about this rundown town. So essentially there's this lady in the Foundation, and she starts, I believe she's in the Foundation, it might be someone else, and she starts having these dreams about a place. And it was known that other people had these dreams as well, but they didn't know where it came from. And she decided it was kind of this longing to be somewhere that she didn't know. She had a home that she could not reach. And she ends up finding it, and they find out that something kind of happened there, and it's lonely because it's kind of it's been abandoned and it's in ruin. And the Foundation actually fixes it up and gets people to move in so it isn't lonely anymore. But there's this whole aspect to it about most people would describe it as nostalgia, but it's more this feeling where you might look at an image of something and yearn for it in a way that it's I haven't been here, but I feel like I've been here and I miss it. Or like, there's a place out there that is home and it is not where I currently am. I am plagued with this feeling, and this article reached so deep into me, grabbed me by the fucking neck, and went, you! It's so good. It's so good, and it also involves dreaming, and it's just such a nice, calming thing. I really recommend it for like a self-care day. If you ever want to feel a little happier about life, you should read it.
I always adore that feeling. Sometimes when I go like on vacations, family vacations, like smaller towns, even though like I don't have any want to live in a smaller town. I mean, I did for like 4 years and it wasn't that great. But anytime I go to one of those, it's just like, well, this is probably home or whatever. It feels like that.
Yeah, right. I get a really extreme feeling like it when I look at planes or stars. And so when I read this, I just never expected someone else to put it into words for me or to explain this feeling, because I kind of felt like I was alone with it. And it made this article really, really special. Because I was like, whoa. Like, I've been to places, like, there was a cottage I went to in January. So nice. And I was like, this feels like I could have lived here forever. Like, I feel like I had memories here. And it's so strange. And it's not a feeling people have ever talked about around me. And I was like, this is great. I need more articles where emotions that aren't common are like brought up, because that was just fantastic. I don't have much else to say about it. It's really good. 5923, Grigori Karpin.
It's weird that it's a desirable feeling, but it's just so rare that like it is very desirable to have like that melancholy feeling, and it definitely like brings that out.
Yeah, like I don't think I would ever want to seek this feeling out purposefully, because in a way it's like, it's kind of sad. Because most of the time when you feel it, it's something you can't have, or something that is impossible, or something you don't know, which means it can take a really long time to find it. But at least after reading this, if you're someone like me, you might feel a little less like it's just you who has this problem. Now you'll know that many people, all 175 upvoters, feel the same. Very upvoted piece.
That might be the lowest upvoted thing we've mentioned so far.
Yeah, this one's really, well, yeah, this one's pretty niche. Sorry, I had another thing open. I was like, oh, is this one it? I'm like, nope. Yeah, 4,000 only has 25 upvotes. Pretty niche thing.
Yeah, 4,000 only has 174. It's just lower.
And what do you have next?
I've completely abandoned going down my list because I've been clicking through, because I opened all the tabs of my top 10 and I've been clicking through, and I remembered this one, which I have to mention now. It's by Stormbreath. It's 3477 and it's called Will the Real Harold Holt Please Stand Up?
Good reference.
Which is about the real-life Prime Minister of Australia, Harold Holt, who ran for a term. He was the 17th Prime Minister of Australia, and in real life, he did disappear off the coast of Australia just when he was going for a swim.
What?
And no one knows where he went. Some people theorize like he was eaten by a shark or something, but just no one knows. He just kind of disappeared while he was the Prime Minister. And this takes that real-life man and makes him an SCP that's 34 men who are all immortal. And the way they gain their immortality is different for each one, but all of them do become immortal through their anomalous means. Some examples of some of my favorites is one that's able to just like cut off his limbs and regrow them at the age when he disappeared. They'll become like that age of a thing. He also, one of them has a pocket watch that he can just rewind and he'll grow younger comparatively from the pocket watch, but he'll lose any memories from the time between those ages. So he also has a little notebook that he writes down any memories that he needs. There's two that are kind of like next to each other that are, one went to the Sarkic cults and got like augmented so he'd live forever and be like a Sarkic being, and then also one that went to the Cogwork Orthodox Church and got like clockwork parts installed in him so he'd live forever, and those two are kind of rivals. And then the final one, -34, which is just constantly on fire. And that somehow keeps him alive, and he's very charred, but you can still tell that he's Harold Holt, and he's said that if he ever goes out, he will just die. But he'll live forever while he's aflame.
Does it hurt him?
and there it is 34 of them.
Oh my god, imagine coming up with 34 ways for someone to be immortal.
Technically, when Stormbreath wrote it, he only wrote about 10 to 15, but then someone else took it upon themselves to write a full document, which is a separate page that's a full document of all 34.
15 is still a lot.
This one's very special in my heart because it's how I got into writing for SCP. The first thing I ever wrote for SCP was a tale set in the Unhuman canon, which I don't think many people know about. It's a pretty new canon and still pretty small, but it's basically where like there was an apocalyptic event where anyone who is not anomalous, like any baseline humans, just disappeared off the face of the earth. And so now it's just like mystical people like mermaids or vampires or ghosts or liches, and anyone who had like immortal powers or just like was anomalous. So all of the Harold Holts probably survived that. And so I have my first ever tale was little like vignettes of what different Harold Holts were doing in the Unhuman canon, which was very fun to write and was what first got me into writing. So I really like this article.
Thank God the Harold Holt wind won.
Another kind of aspect is like they all seem to not actually be the real Harold Holt because they all like talk how you'd assume Harold Holt would respond to stuff. They don't like respond in their own ways. They respond how you'd expect Harold Holt to respond. So they're probably all just like clones of him or whatever, but we don't know.
Maybe he's split. Or like, for every Harold Holt, there's a reality missing one.
Yep.
Feel bad for those, he was a real staple. Where were you without it? I love that. That's so cute. Little Harold Holt's everywhere.
So I've heard a rumor. I got a message from someone. Maybe it was you, maybe it wasn't, a little while ago, that your next one is a tale. Is that true? Is this rumor confirmed?
Is it? Is it? I don't know. The press was getting mad at me.
Drum roll, drum roll. Will we reveal this?
All right. I guess I have more than I thought I did. My next one is in fact. Hey, don't tell anyone this. It's actually a tale.
That's what I heard. Who told you? For me, it was Luxaiko.
Oh no. It would have actually probably been my second favorite, but there's a funny little article called Breakneck by Rounderhouse. Have you seen it or read it?
I don't think I have.
I recommend it. Rounder doesn't write tales very often. Most people know him for stuff like 6,000 and stuff like that. But in this thing, it takes place in this off cyberverse kind of planet where there is a Wanderer's Library and a Foundation like car. So they're essentially like they're street racers and they're representing these places, except they're like racing teams this time. And there's like the Serpent, and I forget what the Foundation was called. But it's this really detailed piece that talks about like this acceleration of the vehicles and this like anomalous fight. They like the cars can like spawn magic wisps around them, and it's like talking about how fast they're going. Insanely fast, by the way. Like if they break the sound barrier or something like that. It's so cool. And like I wouldn't think I would like it because the concept of simple is literally just a street race and it describes the street race. But Rounder added music and you can like listen to it and it really gets you in the mood. And by the end, you're just like, I've never had an article leave my heart beating so fast. It was like, oh my God, I feel like I was in this race. I feel like I was the one on the wheel.
So I want to say I just opened the page to just check if I did recognize it or not. First of all, Vaporwave aesthetic is so good. I wish more pages used it. It's such a great theme.
So true.
And then also the suggested reading music, which I've only seen on like 3 articles before, but it's always so fun to have like reading music to go along with an SCP.
Right. I want to add one to more of mine, but I'm sometimes concerned about like CC by SA rules and what might or might not be allowed. So I don't. But I actually believe, it's funny you mentioned the theme, I'm pretty sure the reason Rounder, for the most part, wrote this article was because no one had written for the theme yet. If you actually go and try to find things with the theme, there's only like 2 things that use it, and one of them is an author page.
Yeah, the only other thing I've seen use it is, I've seen 2 things. Technically, I've seen the page themes page, and then I've seen that author page, and that's about it. Yeah.
And then this one. Yeah, so I think he wrote it. And I agree that it's such a beautiful theme, but it's so hard to find use for it. And I'm really glad someone like bought into that vaporwave aesthetic because it's amazing. It also ended up giving way to one of my favorite art pieces. Shout out to Aetherus. There's this very gorgeous piece of two cars racing, and it looks so good. It's pixel art. I love it. It's my background. Very simple one, but I would do anything for that tale, man. I would do anything.
Speaking of tales by Rounder, one of my favorite tales is Do You Like Huey Lewis in the News? Which focuses on a character that I think has not been fleshed out nearly enough. I mean, this tale fleshes him out perfectly, but it's the owner of Ambrose Restaurants, Chaz Ambrose himself, creates a monthly newsletter to all of his employees, and over the course of those 12 newsletters, he descends into even more madness than he already is, which the title reference is a reference to the movie American Psycho. Mm-hmm. Which tells you about all you need to know about Chaz Ambrose, and it's very well done. I really like those like tales that are like kind of their own format, where it's just 12 newsletters and what Chaz writes in those newsletters.
Rounder makes some like really interesting tales that are not even close to the like SCPs he writes. Very different vibe, right? Like stuff like that. Oh, I think I started reading that one, but I don't know where I left off with it. I also love the Ambrose series. It's such a cool GOI. I hope more comes out of it, though, because it's not very popular right now.
Yeah, the two different GOI formats for it are both very awesome, and I've read, like, everything from both of them. A lot of people, like, complain about the, like, menus that people have written for Ambrose, because they're kind of the shotgun of anomalies approach, where, like, you throw out a bunch of different anomalies and hope at least one makes someone laugh or enjoy it enough to upvote the article. But I've actually used it because I made an expansion for a card game, and I used those for, like, my SCP-themed expansion. You could go to the different Ambrose restaurants and buy cards related to different dishes from those menus, and that was really fun creating all different, like, card effects from the different, like, menu items from the Ambrose menus.
That sounds so sick. Oh my god. I love when things can inspire, like, more artistic things. I feel like that's also a big hitter for all the things I've mentioned is the like what it inspires in me rather than just like, oh, I read this and it was written well. Because I have a long list of things that are just written well, but I have such a short list of things that made me sit there and go like, I need to write or draw or make something for this. I need to add to this or I need to speak about this. Make such good stuff.
Yeah, there's like those special things that like really make you like, well, I want to add to this. And that's like the main appeal of the SCP Foundation as a whole is you can think that and then just do it. 3477, I made a tale about Harold Holt. You just do it.
You can just simply do it. Don't be afraid to absolutely tear apart the work of others. I don't mean that literally. And write your own stuff. That's the big part of getting favorite articles is that you probably want to add to them. And you can. And if anyone tells you otherwise, strangle them. I only have one more thing left.
I'll do one more, and then you can do your last one, and then we'll wrap up just talking about different SCPs that we like.
Let's do it.
My last favorite I have, I'll go with my headcanon for SCP-001, which is SCP-184 the Architect.
Oh, I know this one really well.
It's not a 001, but it's been talked about quite a lot, but it's SCP-184 the Architect by Dr. Gears? Yes, Dr. Gears, which has apparently one of the longest discussion pages ever. Looking at it right now, it's got 170 comments, and all of them really flesh out the article a lot. Like, the article is great itself, but, like, some of the discussions people had with Dr. Gears really flesh out the article to, like, the nth degree about what this little object can do. And this is one of those ones where there is a story attached, but what I really enjoy about it is the actual just, like, object that does a thing. Object what does a thing, which is a little metallic object that, if placed in a room, starts expanding the room, and once it makes the room like 3 times as big as it normally was, then it starts making new rooms that don't make too much sense, and then start using different objects from the initial room to make actual like full rooms out of it. Like, for instance, when it was placed in a temple and expanded the temple, one of like the far out rooms from the center room was just all made out of jade. It just looked like a normal temple room, but it was just all made out of jade statues. just the entire thing. The chairs, the tables, the dressers were all just jade statues. Now it's capped on a pedestal outside is how they contain it, and it's not to be brought into any building because it'll expand the building. But the thing is, it's put outside, so theoretically it's expanding the universe, and that's why the universe is constantly expanding, is because we have this thing outside, and it's just constantly expanding the universe. So there's another tale kind of attached to it that's about people like flying out into the depths of space, and when they get out far enough, some of the planets are just like, there's a planet entirely made out of stone. Which is, okay, that's not an example, because that's what planets are made out of. But
Take your time.
But there's just like weird stuff when you go far out into the galaxy, and it's because the entire universe is created by 184. And so there's the sentiment that I really like, which is my headcanon, which is the best way to hide 001 is to put it as a regular SCP number. So 184 is my 001.
I really loved the Architect, but when you were mentioning the planet thing, I like completely... It's such a long article, and it does so much exploration and talks about so many things. I completely forgot about the entire portion.
Oh, to be clear, that is another tale someone else wrote that's associated with it. That's not part of the actual article.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I remember it, but I was like, oh my god. It has so much expansion, which you don't expect, and the planet thing was so, like, funny to me. I think one of the rooms I remember specifically was just, like, it being made entirely out of, like, copper pipes or something.
Yeah.
Or, like, one of the planets was just made of, like, pipes, and I thought... For some reason, I thought that was so, like, good. Like, you're just, like, traveling out, and at first you're like, oh, yeah, this is, like, totally normal. And you get to a certain extent, and you're like, this is literally, like, an espresso machine planet. What is happening?
Or, yeah, like, I think there was, like, a planet where, like, it had rings, like Saturn or whatever, but the rings were just made out of, like, microwaves or something. Just, like, a bunch of small microwaves floating around the planet.
Yeah, it's less, like, material, and it becomes more, like, objects and man-made things. And they're like, we are out in the middle of space. What is happening?
Because, like, the center, the heart of it is Earth, and when we create stuff on Earth, then it has, like, new stuff to, like, copy and create from. So then it just creates a bunch of stuff out into the universe. It's such a cool one.
And it wants more microwaves. Yes, my final favorite is... God, this one's popular. This is popular. I don't think as popular as the first two, but it's 2480 by Metaphysician. I don't know how big into sarcasm you are, but I'm quite obsessed with it. And another thing I'm really obsessed with, you mentioned cliches, is like exploration and MTF teams. I prefer when the MTF team makes it out alive, which is much harder to find. And surprisingly, in this article, it talks about this town that is essentially acting really weird. And when they send agents in, they're like, they find these GOC transcripts, and they find out that, like, you can take something to see what is actually happening, and it's essentially like a psychic overlay. Yeah, there's a and they end up traveling through this cultist house, and they find this really weird terrain. In the end, I think all the GOC members die, but it was in a way that was so different from other articles. And the MTF too, I don't recall if any MTF died. It kind of spoke about how they realized that they could save themselves, but they chose not to, and they were slowly picked off one by one. But it was less like there was a monster chasing them, and it was more like they were their own downfalls. Less than like a I lost my sanity way, but more of a I made a mistake I knew I shouldn't have made, but I just did it. Very gory, and less in the laugh is fun way. More of like I just crushed all your bones into a really small hole way, which isn't very pleasant if you ask me. It was actually the thing that really inspired me. It inspired Grigori Karpin too, I know that, and I get sad about it because it's supposed to be my article. It was one of the things that made me a big fan of Metaphysician and Sarcasm, just because of this. It's very popular, but I hadn't read many things with, like, areas that were affected. I mostly read where you go somewhere and there's already something, but when they look at this town normally, it is just a normal town in retrospect. If you don't take anything, there are people that lived there that were just people who were like, I'm gonna move to this town, and everyone was like, okay. And they don't know. They don't know that surrounding them is a bunch of cultists, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I remember reading it and like getting very like Lovecraftian horror vibes. Like it definitely felt a lot like an Innsmouth type of town where there's just like people who live there and have just their everyday lives in this like horrific cultist hotspot.
And God, are they been chilling? Most of them aren't aware in this scenario, and they just like do their thing. There are some people in it who are like gone insane, and I think it's a matter of how long you've been there, because a lot of the time they were described as old. Such a good article, super long. I've mostly listened to it.
Or more people like who know but don't point it out because they know like if they do they're just gonna get swallowed and killed. So they just are like, well, I know that there's such horrific stuff going on here, but better to ignore it to survive.
Yeah, I remember there's like a fisherman, and they were like, hey man, what's going on here? And he was basically just like, I don't know, man, the fish are pretty crazy out here. That's not even close to what actually happened, but like close description, you know? Like everyone they asked was like, man, crazy you ask. What are you talking about? But then they'd put it in a way that's like so clear that they're like being held hostage practically. They're like, funny you say that, haha. Why would there be a gun pressed to my head right now? And then the MTF would be like, why are you suggesting that? And they're like, what? So good. Love that concept. That's all of my favorites.
I still have like 4 more, but I think that's good to wrap up for talking about favorites. Another thing I wanted to go over in this first episode is how we both found the SCP Foundation website.
I'll let you go first, because I just went.
So I found it through Reddit, and I didn't get fully tricked into thinking it was a actual government thing. I think I found it back in 2016 or 2017 or so. But how I found it was a Reddit post that was like, what are some leaked government documents that are actually really interesting to read? And so I was like, well, it's not actually a leaked document, but there's some SCPs that are really cool. And the first one I ever read, which in retrospect, I don't enjoy too much, but it's still very fun, is SCP-1171 Humans Go Home, which is about a suburban house where the windows are constantly fogged, and if you use your finger to draw out words on it, someone else will respond, and they're like apparently like this 8-tentacled monster being. He complains about how like a human just moved in next door and how he hates humans, and he doesn't hate humans, he just can't take them, and it's kind of allegories for racism and stuff, and I think it's very well done.
Oh yeah, you love racism.
I can't get enough of it. But it just really intrigued me, and then I started, like, obviously linking around to different stuff, and for the next, like, 3 or so years, I was just, like, on and off and didn't have an account, just, like, randomly looked at articles. Like, I'd, like, binge it for, like, a full month, and then forget about the whole website for, like, another year, and then come back to it, and then finally I decided to write for it, and then I started this podcast about it, and that's where I am now.
Man, you really summed up a lot of time in the end there.
Yeah, and then some boring stuff happened where I became a writer.
Yeah, and then I wrote, and then, and then I started a podcast, and it all happened really fast, really, really fast. Oh, God, I wish I had something, like, neat and tidy like that. Unlike you, I was tricked into believing the SCP Foundation was real.
You were? I didn't know this.
Yeah, so my whole life I've been into horror, creepypasta, slashers, and I was like one of the first kids in my entire school who had access to the internet and would go into that stuff. So I was a fan of YouTubers and all that all the way back in like 2009, which from what my age was really strange. But I was introduced when my friend, my classmate who sat next to me on the bus, and is still my friend, by the way, was like, I found this really cool thing called the SCP Foundation. Let me come over for a sleepover, and we'll watch these videos I found. And they're like, yeah, there's these people, and they find these files, and they read them to us, so that way the government can't, like, find out about it, and it's so secretive. And we'd watch Tat's Top 10 videos, or Volgun videos.
Wow.
I don't know if Volgun was around at that time, but I know Tat's Top 10 was.
Top 10 scariest SCPs that can kill you.
Yeah, we watch like Top 10 friendliest SCPs, and we would watch that, and I would get so into it. I was like, oh my god, this is insane. And at the time, everything was really simple, right? You had there's nothing super in depth for someone of my age at the time to be like, oh no, this is too much.
Do you know what series it was? Or what year?
We were in Series 1. God, it would have been 2009 to 10. Or maybe 2011.
Oh, wow. You're very early.
Yeah, it was when the site started. I think 2009 wasn't necessarily when I like watched it, but my friend told me about it. And then 2010, 2011 was when we started watching things up until 2012. They kind of weaned off of it, but I kind of stayed. And I remembered that I really liked 049, which, yeah, no surprise, right? But he ended up becoming like an imaginary friend. And it was really weird. I would like talk to him as though he were there. And I was like, yeah, that's SCP-049. Don't mind him. I think I eventually like kind of got distracted by other things in life and kind of forgot about it. And then 2016 rolls around. And I'm thinking of it again because I'm seeing videos and I'm back in a creepypasta. I'm now modding creepypasta server. Maybe not modding, I'm in creepypasta servers. And I'm like, I really like this SCP stuff. I'm going to join this site. So glad I knew the site, by the way. Back when I was a kid, I tried to call the fake SCP phone number. There was one. They're like, if you call it, the SCP Foundation will pick up. And we started calling and then I hung up because I was too scared.
Did you know there actually was someone who made an SCP or a G, and they actually like used a phone number, and if you called it, it would, through like a series of things, it would make you think you were actually calling like the SCP Foundation?
That is so sick.
I think it's down now, but someone made that.
Yeah, like, I think ours also had, like, an SCP Foundation, like, fake little thing, but it was, like, really short. It was nothing big. I was just like, hang up! But yeah, in 2016, I was then like, I'm gonna join the site. I was about 11 years old. And if you don't know, 11-year-olds couldn't join the site. I have papers. If I could show you, I would. I wrote down the rules. I wrote down like CSS things, like how to make things bold and how to add a rating module down on paper. And I made like notes like, what do people like? What do people not like tips and stuff, right? And I wrote the password down and I signed up on this account. Forgot about it. I joined the site again because I'm on Amino for it, and I'm like, and I would really like to talk with the authors, and someone's like, well, you can. Here's insert server link full of authors, and that's how I became an artist and author for the community, and it was so strange. I one day find out that my other account was a member of the site. So I now have visible proof that I've been in the site since 2016, when I was 11 years old. And I think that is just absolutely...
Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad I have a really unique story. Lucky me.
So I think that'll wrap it up. On my recording, we've got exactly an hour. So that probably won't translate to a full hour, but we'll see. Do you have any wrap-up stuff?
I'm Aiko. I'm super cool. All of my recommendations were much better than T-Staffor's. Smiles.
Yeah, definitely just go read all of hers. Don't read any of my suggestions, because they're all very, very bad.
Yeah, no. All of yours are fake and aren't actually real articles. We've tricked you from the beginning. None of them exist. We sat down and just made things up. It's true. It's true. The authors don't exist either, including PeppersGhost.
No, it's a real government website that you've stumbled across.
It's a reason.
And you should definitely shut it down because the government is tracking you right now.
The police are outside my house. The police are outside... Help. Wee. That's them. Thank you for watching. Or listening, rather.
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you for watching this still image on YouTube for an hour.
I hope you've linked up the live cameras to the video, so when I look and watch the video I will edit, by the way, and not T-Staffor in brackets.
Yeah, you've definitely been recording your face this whole time, right? Pretty close up?
Yeah, we've got the live camera in the corner, so that way it looks like I'm an anomaly. It's gonna be perfect.
And as we say at the end of every episode...
Help me.
Help me, SCP Real.
Help me, SCP Real. SCP Real, help me. Someone has me in a cage. Thank you for watching.
Goodbye.
Bye. That was horrible. I didn't record any of it.